Okay, thank you. With that, the next item then is approval of the proposed 2013-2014 school year budget with consideration of reduction and/or addition of staffing positions. And Mr. Gorder will probably have something to say about this.
Well, in your packet, I put in there today around noon the finished 2013-14 budget that we would like to bring forward to the annual meeting, along with a 2013-14 preliminary levy summary. Of course, this is all subject to change based on some factors that we'll be talking about here in a minute. But we did receive the 2013-14 aid estimate, which really allows us to start looking at setting the levy. And as always, I like to start with the big picture first, and that big picture really starts here on the bottom when we start talking about what our levy is. And when we talk about a levy in Toma, for the most part, we're talking about the levy as it is compared to $100,000 of valuation. So for the 2014 school year, as of right now, and this will change, the proposed levy would be $894.05 on a home that's valued at $100,000. As compared to a levy that was set last year at $879.30. So that is an increase of approximately $14.75 as compared to an approximate $39.40 increase the previous year. So let's just break this down a little bit further. What does that all mean when we look at the numbers, and what are some variables? Well, we projected the local property tax fund levy at $10,306,858 in Fund 10. The thing that we don't know yet is that we don't know the number of students, so that can increase or decrease the revenue limit, and we don't know the final aid estimate, which we won't get until October 15th. And keep in mind that the enrollment we won't know until the third Friday count in September. So those are two pretty big variables. Right now we're estimating the enrollment flat, no increase, no decrease. This is coming off 2 years of slight declining enrollment, and again we talked about that last month, with a little bit of that kind of coming from probably some changes out at Fort McCoy. The other thing that factors into them again is the Fund 39 property tax levy. So you have a total all-fund levy of $11,764,554, which is approximate $194,129 increase over the previous year. And down below here you can see what the increases were in the previous year in this kind of non-highlighted area as you compare 11-12 to 12-13. And last year at this time we looked at about a $489,000, actually about $481,199 or $190 total overall increase. So when we take, I guess a little bit, that's about a 1.68% overall increase this year compared to last year. The other factor that we don't know, and we won't know the equalized values in the district until October 1st. Right now, as with the equalized values, we've estimated those equalized values as no increase in the equalized values. We've been pretty fortunate in the Toma community, actually the Toma area, that we haven't seen a significant overall drop in equalized values in what we would consider the Toma area school district. There have been some school districts that drop. Now keep in mind, if this number goes up, this number stays the same, your levy increases. If this number stays the same and this number goes down, your levy increases. So typically what you like to see is a little bit of a corresponding increase over on the levy side of things with a corresponding increase over on the equalization values, which kind of helps keep your levy, not your levy, but your mill rate down. It spreads out that cost of that levy a little bit wider over the tax base. So that's really what we would like to see, and that's really what we saw in the 90s and for the most part the 2000s. You have your equalized values increasing at a greater rate than you do your tax levy. It keeps the mill rate down. that's really the levy summary. Any questions up to this point? I know there's a lot there, and if you're not familiar with it, it's even a little bit more maybe confusing, but I think overall the thing that we're looking at, you know, when we talked in January, we talked about a potential mill rate of maybe $920 per $100,000 evaluation, if you remember. And that was based off 8 estimates and you know, potential dollars per students and what that would look like. And again, we'll talk a little bit more why this is probably lower than that $920. But so overall, it's probably better than what I would have forecasted or actually even asked for, given that we do have some declining enrollment that is not only hurting us on the revenue limit, but also on the equalization side of things. Any other questions? We'll keep trucking along here. So then when we look at the overall, I better squeeze that down just a little bit. That ain't gonna work, is it? 90. There we go, that's a little bit better. When we look at the overall summary of revenues and expenditures, I got actually three columns. The 12-13 October budget, the budget as we're presenting tonight, and then the budget that was presented on 6/30/2013, which was in June. And really, the point of that is, one, it helps me get a better understanding of what's going on with the budget, but it also shows you that the budget has really not changed from June to July. So there's not any really significant changes except within one area, and that's in Fund 27, which had the net effect of reducing the transfer figure from Fund 10 to Fund 27, which is a good thing. And we'll get to that, and I can clearly point that out for you. So again, what it's showing us is the revenues and expenditures are equal in each of the funds except for Fund 38 and 39, where you're seeing a slight difference with a decrease there, but that's based because our expenses are on the fiscal year and our revenues are on the calendar year, so there's a little bit of offset. We do have fund balance in Funds 38 and 39, and sooner or later, coming up soon, this whole negative thing will change to a positive thing. So instead of taking away, we'll start adding. And as we look in the Treasurer's report a little bit from now, you'll see the fund balance is right around, I think, $380,000 in our debt service funds. Questions?
You know, I'll just say it again, Greg, what jumped out at me when I saw that was I just expected the budgets to be dramatically different after the legislature approved that increase in the revenue limit. But again, I guess, as you explained, we will...
I can clearly point that out, so hold that question and ask that when we see the revenue limit sheet, and I'll explain that to you. Okay, why our overall budget only increased $56,226, because tonight I've heard what you have going on in the district, you're competing for funds. There's competition for funding, there's competition for kids. When you have only an increase of $56,226 and your insurance and your salary increase is around $400,000, the money's got to come from somewhere. There's only two places it can come from. It can either come from programs for kids, or it's going to come from salary and fringe from staff. It's really your only two options. So it really makes it difficult, regardless of who you are, when you're trying to build a budget, make tough decisions that are best for kids, because most of the stuff that we've done over the last year or two, or even 3, probably don't make a lot of sense to the average person. But on the flip side of that, this is no different than your household budget. You have to make difficult decisions, and that's what you've been forced to do, and that's what you've done. And you try to do it as best as you can. What are some assumptions built within this budget? We just talked about salary and fringe. We're talking about a 1% increase in salaries overall. We're talking about a 5.3% health insurance increase. No increase on the dental, and a 1% increase on the Wisconsin retirement system. And again, you can see the total budgets there. And this includes a $150 increase on expenditures per student. And I'll talk about how that's divided up here. What do we have for flexibility in the budget? This is always big, because if you don't build in some flexibility, you still have to negotiate with your staff. You still do that by law, so you're going to have to sit in negotiations. So we have to put in a figure. Is it 1%, 2%? You know, which figure is that? We know it's really capped by the Consumer Price Index at about 2.07 now. But as many of us know that have been through that process, we're not sure quite what it is. So when we're looking at that, we know right now the budget's built on 1%. If we're going to go higher than that, we have to have some flexibility, and that's what you're looking at. I think I calculated to go another 1% would cost the district about $180,000. Okay, so as we're talking about things and looking at things, there's flexibility. But the thing that you want to remember when we get to the review the 12-13 budgets is that you don't want to put yourself in a bad spot at the end of the year, so you're starting to take away from fund balance. That's really, especially in Fund 10, that's a very difficult thing to do. It can have effects on your Moody rating, your credit ratings, and even on your cash flow. So what were the changes in the budget? Mrs. Zardi, if you want to make any comments or have any input on this. Again, as we talked about earlier, there's a library media specialist valued at about $50,610. There's a LaGrange elementary position at $47,249. So keep in mind with special education, you really don't have a choice whether you're going to fund it or not fund it. Because when the kids come, because what they have is called an IEP, you're required to offer those student services. And with some of the more challenging kids, it could be just one student moving in the district. It doesn't have to be 10 or 15. This particular position here, again, based on numbers, we think we can eliminate that. Who knows what's going to happen next year? Who knows who's going to be moving in or what new needs we see? Toma Middle School is asking for additional staffing at $15,000. Probably is a little bit high. Where you're asking for about 2 hours additional a day. 3? That was
class periods.
3 class periods. Curriculum leaders were also added at $20,000. There was a halftime Title I position that was eliminated. And speaking of hard to find staff, we talk about the speech and language. What are we short, Cindy? 3 staff members or 2 staff members if we had our druthers?
We're short 2 right now.
Right now we're short 2. But we still have to provide services, and this is based on what we think is an artificially created high demand for speech people. There's no reason that we couldn't get more students that want to get in the area of speech, and they are good students, but they're trying to keep that pressure there to create high demand for their jobs. So what, in a sense, what we've had to do since we're not able to find the staff is that last year, and this isn't new in the budget because we added this probably in October, we added 2.5 FTEs of additional aid time to offer those speech teachers the same issues that really our library people are asking for tonight. Same thing. The difference being is, again, that IEP, a federally mandated or a federal law on what services we have to provide to special education kids. And then also on top of that, because we still weren't able to meet the needs of the students, we've had to purchase about $100,000 in additional software to help meet the needs of those kids. So a lot of the savings that we saw over here are clearly getting offset on this side. And really this has been the story of the budget for the last 3 or 4 years. Tough decisions with no really right or wrong answers to them. Questions?
At the top, you had mentioned that one of the assumptions was a 5.3 for health insurance. Is that a done deal? Is that decided?
Yes.
Okay, that's the premium we know for a fact. Okay. And then the current situation with the speech therapists, we continue to search.
Yes, positions are posted. Dr. Skovanek continues to look. If we're not able to hire, then we will probably increase our presence learning opportunities for kids. So that did work very well, where this is online speech therapy. The speech therapist actually is that we utilized last year, Rachel's in River Falls. She connects with kids through the computer. The students were engaged. They enjoyed it. We're looking at utilizing the online work for all of our outlying schools to prevent the time lost from travel, and then focus the speech therapists that we do have in town where they can maximize their time with students. So if we need to purchase more hours, we will look at doing that.
This is not a cost savings.
No.
It's probably as expensive, maybe even a little bit more than actually having the staff members there to do what we're doing to try to cover those needs.
We have no choice, right? We
no
have to
choice.
provide that service.
Right.
Yeah.
And we still did not meet all the students' needs last year. And there were students that did not get serviced, unfortunately.
So what did those students do?
They just didn't get service.
Well, they did not get service. Their parents were notified that if they were able to obtain speech-language services elsewhere, that the district would pay for those, but those parents were unable to find help either.
It's kind of a catch-22 with that, because like Toma Memorial has speech therapists, but since the students have an IEP, they have to be certified by the state, and Toma Memorial's therapists aren't certified by the state.
Many of them are not interested in getting licensed by DPI.
Right.
So,
And is the requirements for those students that receive those services, is that standardized throughout the state? I mean, it's not, it's somewhat subjective, I'm sure, but it's a standard that, we're applying to each of the students so that our numbers are not different than other places based on a different test or whatever that they take.
right. There are set criteria that determine your eligibility for speech language, yes.
Have the CSAs looked at that more so again, or supplying?
sorry,
has CSA looked at supplying those therapists again? I thought at one time they kind of did that, or?
They have the same problems.
Yeah, I don't know
They do.
that they can locate
Okay.
any. And I know a meeting that I was at today between speech-language pathologists, school psych, school social workers, there are LMC directors. There are massive shortages in all of those areas. People are looking.
Okay.
I tried to get you smiling here a little bit. So then we look at Fund 10 revenues, and just real briefly, you're seeing an increase of $192,447 on the Fund 10 property tax levy here, and again, that's due to a reduction in state aid. Otherwise, you're seeing over in this column, or otherwise there's no change. The changes are highlighted in red if there are any. Again, we estimated about $18,032,000, so we picked up an additional $60,000 in aid, but overall it's $132,000 decrease from the previous year. And then course computer aid is $626 increase over the previous year. Of note is probably on the, going too far here, is the revenues, which are the same that were estimated in June at $30,789,937.
And Greg, with respect to that equalization aid, that decrease, there were articles in the paper showing different districts and who won, who lost.
Yes.
And, I guess in that respect, we're a loser.
We're a loser, but it isn't as bad as it could be. So I think in some ways, and really when you look at winning and losing on as a, hopefully was able to explain, is that state aid is based on what you spent last year in shared cost and your enrollment. And if you have a decrease in enrollment, that's going to affect what you get in state aid the next year. And we had really a significant decrease in enrollment over the last couple of years. So more so than any other year this year, that decrease in state aid is based on the decrease in enrollment as I look at it.
Okay. Yeah, it's just a product of some...
It would have been this way 10 years ago as it would have been today. Whenever you have a decrease in enrollment, you're going to have reduction in state aid. And part of that is because if you're not having, again, you go back to those equalized values, if you don't have that same corresponding drop in equalized values, and if your per member is viewed as a function of the number of students you have divided by your total property wealth, then what happens is you start to look property rich in the eyes of the formula.
Okay.
And although I wouldn't say we're property rich, there's many other districts that are better off in the funding formula. That's the way it works. Questions on revenues? So we'll move into Fund 27 revenues, and this is really where the only change occurred. And I'm going to slide over just a little bit. When we look at revenues or categorical aid, again, categorical aid is based on previous year's expenditures on aidable costs only. And as it was estimated earlier this year, that was based on budgeted figures. When our actual expenses came in, when you take that aidable expenses time 26%, which is what we're kind of hearing, might be the aid, it could be 25%. Just depends how it shakes out. It actually resulted in an increase in categorical aid of $66,540, which had the net effect of reducing money we have to pull out of Fund 10 to put into Fund 27 to balance, because your revenues have to equal expenditures, and the only revenues we get are categorical aid and some federal aid and some Medicaid. So the general fund has to make up the balance of that money, so we're able to reduce that fund transfer because we got more aid down here by $66,540. It didn't change the expenses in Fund 27. It just allowed us to drop this number by about $66,540. Questions? 27? I can go faster if you would like me to.
This is good.
Okay. All right.
You're at a good pace.
Good pace. Then I will start tripping over myself if I do. But as you can see, there's no change in Fund 30 revenues and some slight changes in the food service budget, which we will talk about at the end of the night tonight. That's our revenues. When we look at the fund grand totals, we will see exactly where the change in expenditures were. This is where that $2.5 million fund transfer sits. This is Fund 10 now we're looking at here. It leaves this budget in Fund 10 and goes over to Fund 27. So we're able to decrease it by $66,540, which had the net effect of reducing the Fund 10 budget. Well, we want to present a balanced budget and maximize the revenue limit, so we added that $66,540 along with the, I believe our revenues to not equal expenditures, or expenditures to not equal revenues by about $3,342. We added that $3,342 to this number, and again added back to our operation budget in the area of natural gas, approximately $70,000. Because we had reduced the natural gas and electricity budget, probably closer to actuals for the last 3 to 5 years, but also making it enough of a risk where it could be problematic. So when we look at the greater budget, you know, do we consider this flexibility? Yeah, it could be. Again, but it depends on how much you want to take a risk between now and the end of the year. If you want to take all your flexibility away, and let's say we get that spike increase like I believe it was in 06 or 07, where the energy bills got so high, you're going to leave yourself short. And then if our revenues don't equal our expenditures, we have to start reducing fund balance. Which reducing fund balance isn't a bad thing unless if it's planned. If it's not planned, that's not such a good thing. So that's the big picture. Again, revenues equal expenditures, as you can see here. And then what you'll see in this slide here is that Fund 27 expenditures and Fund 38 and 39 expenditures didn't change. It was just all in the revenues in Fund 27 and all in the expenditures in Fund 10. That's the big picture of all the budgets. That includes the grants along with the other expenditures. Now I just try to refine the budget a little bit here. One, it helps us get a better understanding what our grant costs, what our non-grant costs, and actually gives us a little bit better way to kind of really interpret what the budget actually means here. And what you're seeing on this page is salary, non-salary totals. This is a combination of salary and non-salary without grants. There aren't any explanations because all the explanations will either come afterwards or on the salary side were explained in those budget assumptions that you saw. Those are the reasons for the salary increases as you saw originally. And again, you can see the different budget areas where we have changes. Again, Fund 27. Grants, I guess this is really, shouldn't be a surprise, we've talked about it, and we've been hearing in the media sequester, and as a direct result of that, we're seeing reductions, and I'll get to the last page here, in the overall entitlements that we get from IDEA, which is PL 94-142. We're looking at about a 9 to 10% reduction, which means that we will have $87,612 in funds available to us in special education. And then in Title I, I think we're looking at about a 5% reduction, which means we'll have about $48,602. Of note is Fund 27. There's this thing called MOE, or Maintenance of Effort, and I say that again so that we remember that. What that means in Fund 27, if we spend $4 million in 2012-13, we cannot spend less in 2013 and 14. MOE is not concerned about us losing federal funds. So we have to make up those federal funds through district funds, which means that we have to then spend more in Fund 27, regardless if maybe some of those services were needed or not needed. Does that make sense? You heard that enough? Mm-hmm. So that's always a concern for us when your costs are decreasing. We're hoping to be over the hump because we've really, again, used most of the tools that were available to us by reducing significantly reducing benefits offered to staff through insurance changes, and then also the freeze that we had last year. If we had reduced those benefits too far and couldn't meet MOE, again, we'd have to find that money from Fund 10 and use it in Fund 27. The bottom line is you're seeing a reduction of about $160,000 overall in federal grants, which means we can do less for kids. Again, salary budgets, you can see where the changes occurred in the various programs here. I got to ask Cindy, and is Paul in here yet, or did he leave? The alternative program, why is that down 51,000? Did we eliminate? I stumped myself. Trying to think of.
I haven't eliminated any position.
That might be a coding issue there. I'll go back and I'll send you an email on what that one in particular is that's bothering me now. And then you can see where the increases. And again, the rest of those increases are due to that 1% increase in salary, the 5.3% increase on health insurance, and so forth and so on. And the changes in the staffing additions and reductions that we reviewed.
Consider the challenge program at McCoy as part of alternative.
We'll come back to it. We'll keep moving. So when we're looking at the non-salary budgets, and again, the salary, non-salary correspond, you can see the major changes I've highlighted in blue. Construction, every year we try to see that budget at about $350,000, and then for some reason, if we have access, we'll add to this budget. Keep in mind, this goes up and down, and most of the time, like we had $586,000 in this budget last year. You can't count on that money every year, so we really look at it for one-time expenses because it's really difficult to add ongoing costs when you have budgets like that. And again, in operations, up slightly increase here. District-wide programs, this is primarily due to the fund transfer. due to increases in salary and fringes. And then curriculum and technology were both reduced by $80,000. We had given them an additional $80,000 last year. So when you look at that, how were you able to build a budget on a $60,000 increase, give staff a 1% increase, and then make up a 5.3% insurance increase? You're seeing these significant decreases in these budget areas here and some of the elimination of programs. And then if we really want to even get a little bit more deeper into what do those numbers mean, we can start taking a look at alternative school here. These are the exact budget items for each of those budget areas. You know, one of the things that kind of stands out here that we have no control over, we had about a $40,000 increase on our insurance, and $36,000 of that was actually due to workers' compensation, which we do our best to eliminate, but you know, we're on the hook for staff from the minute they enter the school grounds to the minute they leave the school grounds. So slips and falls, things like that, we're on the hook with them. And not to say that those are all due to that, but with 500 employees. The other one that we got to try to be mindful of as we go through is unemployment compensation and what you have to pay, regardless whether that staff member was fired or just eliminated. Due to costs. Unemployment can drive up costs significantly, if you're familiar with that, and actually can take away from programs in the long run too. And they're not going away very quickly like they used to. It's a good 2.5, 3 year run with unemployment right now. Operation, again, when we talked about that reduction, this is where the actual increase was put into, gas for heat, and that really is going to get probably split up between the two. It really doesn't matter for me which one it goes into. It's flexibility for not just utilities, but any budget area. Because the problem, again, as I said, the tighter you line your budgets, the more likely that you are to go negative at the end of the year than to stay positive. Construction, and then when we look at the district-wide programs, you can see the $66,540 in the reduction from the transfer to special education. And you can look at those again. We talked about them at the last meeting. Let's look at this revenue limit sheet. Shrink this down a little bit because we said we ought to talk about that. The revenue limit sheet begins and really ends with the enrollment and the per pupil amount that you receive. So when we look at the revenue limit here, it's based on a 3-year rolling average. So we want to look at this box here. We want to look at September 2013, which is coming up the third Friday in September, the September in 2012, and the September in 2011. That is averaged out. If we look at last year's enrollment, 3,129 versus 3,105, that's a difference of 24 students. Take that 24 students times your per pupil, allocated per pupil amount, $9,146. That's the amount of dollars that you lost because of that decrease in enrollment. I think that factored to about $268,000 when we looked at it earlier today. So you factor that decrease in enrollment coupled with the increase on the revenue limit of $75, the net effect was an increase on the revenue limit sheet of about approximately $60,000. So why, Greg, is there only $75 up here when actually the governor gave us $150? Well, because 75 of that came on the revenue limit. All right, so we take 75 times add that to last year's per pupil amount and come up with $9,146.64. Multiply that times our estimated enrollment, which you can see is flat, okay, at 2012, 111 FTEs in summer school, which translates to 44 full-time FTEs, 3,065 kids or FTEs in 2012. We're saying the same thing. Multiply that times your 3-year average, or take the 3-year average, multiply that times 9,146, you come up with your revenue limit. You do get an exemption, $219,519 for the declining enrollment, which will go away once that enrollment goes back up. So in the end, what we see is an increase of $75. We will see another $75 in the second year of the biennial budget. Okay? So where does that other $75 get factored in? They're going to give that to us as categorical aid, meaning that's separate from the revenue limit sheet. It's outside the revenue limit sheet. It helps us on the levy side of things, because if our levy was to go up based on another $75 per student, remember when we talked about it, that if your equalized values don't go up but your levy goes up, or your levy goes up, then your mill rate also goes up. So that's a good thing. The bad thing about it is now, because that 75 times 3,105 student equates to about $232,000. And then if we said our enrollment was probably going to be the same next year, we've just created an artificial approximately $464,000 revenue shortage at the end of the year that somebody will have to fulfill, or if they don't give us that $75 in some form or fashion, we would have to cut $464,000 2 years from now. Make sense? I had to do it 3-4 times so it was making sense as well. So it comes like a federal grant. You just give it to us. That doesn't mean they have to give it to us in 2 years. Whereas you look at the increase on the revenue limit, this, you can see how this was added to this last year, so this is our new base. So whatever they give us next year, we still get credit for that $75, but not the other $75 that's considered categorical aid. Questions before I move on? When we look at our state aid calculation, again, you can see up here, you got your membership. This is based on the January count, because we have a January 2nd pupil count too. And then you also have your summer FTE equivalents up here, your shared cost, which is the amount of money that the state says they will reimburse you for. We're typically aided, or right now we're aided at about 60%. So we're considered a high aided district. We receive about $18,081,135 in state aid from the state of Wisconsin. So what does this look like in the big picture in the mill rate history? You can see down here, this is information basically repeated, but if we look at it on the graph, we look at our mill rate history, we still have a very low mill rate as it compares to the last 30, 40 plus years. We're still not doing too bad in comparison to some of the higher years, although you do see this trend of it rising and a little bit flat. Our tax levy history, we're not spending less money, we're still spending more money than we have in the previous years, so this is still continuing at a trend. But one of the trends that really stuck out this year, probably because they added, or extra dot was added here for 2013, is the leveling out of the equalized values. This goes up, this levels out, tax levy increases. Or mill rate increases, excuse me. So that's your 2013-14 budget summary. Again, what you're approving tonight is a budget to bring to the annual meeting for approval. The annual meeting, you will approve the budget, but there will still be changes to that budget when we finalize the numbers and when you actually set the levy in the end of October. So we will probably be bringing this budget, well, if you approve it, this budget forward at the annual meeting, and then potentially amending it again in October, as you always have. Questions? There's good news here. It's not all bad. We got $150 per student increase. That's good. It could have been a lot worse. It could have been 50. It could have been 75. You know, we got to 75 additional in categorical aid. That helps the levy. You know, so considering where we were at in January and the potential cuts that could have happened in January if had we not getting these dollars, this isn't, it's not what we want, but it isn't what we thought we could get either. So try to keep it in perspective a little bit. That's supposed to make you smile, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing that's still just, I've heard the explanation and I understand, but it was still hard to accept the fact that when I first thought about a $150 increase, I was thinking, okay, you know, roughly 3,000 students, there's $450,000. That really helps the budget. And then, you know, we come back to that increase of actually $56,000 in the budget. Again, I guess, one, as you've explained, it's really for revenue limit purposes, which really sets our budget. It was just $75. And then beyond that, you have to take the rolling average, and our average student FTEs from last year to this year actually dropped, which accounts for another couple $100,000. And I understand that, but it's still hard to sort of reconcile that simple math, okay? 3,000 students times $150 to what we actually
You
end up with.
Again, you got to take that 24 students that you lost and basically multiply that by that same number to kind of get an idea why you're not getting that aid.
But I guess, as you pointed out, if we did not get that increase,
I just remember sitting here in January panicking. It wasn't outwardly, it was inwardly.
no.
Just as, you know, when we talk about budgets, and we're not there yet, but we got some things in 14-15 that, you know, one of the tasks after, probably in the beginning of August, we'll need to be talking about that at the annual meeting to a certain degree. That might be a budget item that you have to add, now that I think about that, is what's going on in 14-15. Because if you look at some of those projections, and I believe that was based on a $75 increase, you know, because it's coming on categorical aid, and we're going to get that in 14-15. I'm not sure what that does for 15-16, but we need to start looking forward. We do know we're going to be dropping a considerable amount of debt in the 14-15 school year. It might give us an opportunity to look at some of these programs. And the list is quite lengthy when you start looking back over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. So, you know, it might give you an opportunity to look at what programs we need to start looking back and adding back to the budget. Keeping in mind there's no certainty in any budgets like there were in the last 20 years.
So remind me, Greg, what's the actual document we're looking at for the
13-14
summary of revenue?
2013-14 budget presentation, 7/15/2013.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Gorder, just for clarification one more time, then, we're looking at an increase at this point in time, 1.68% increase, which...
That would be on both the levy and the mill rate. Just simply because right now our equalized values are estimated to stay the same.
So potentially $14.75
Increase on $100,000 of per valuation.
So that's about, if you own a $100,000 home, an increase of about $1.22 per month.
And for us to get to that levy, we have to set our budget tonight, correct?
You don't set the budget tonight, you just pass the budget to bring forward to the
Pass,
annual meeting.
right. We just pass a budget to bring forward to the annual meeting, and at the annual meeting, that levy is set. So, right. So
That
we're...
doesn't prevent you from,
Yeah.
at some point in time, coming back and making changes. You just,
Right.
that is your budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and the final isn't until October.
until October.
Yep.
And that's making the assumption that you're going to levy to the maximum.
Which this
This
budget
is
does.
built on levying to the maximum on the revenue, which it has been every year since I've been here. I believe every year previously, the district has never not levied to the maximum. The implications for not doing that are pretty great too. It's a spiral that you can't get out of.
Okay. Any other questions?
So the total budget we're looking at proposing for our annual meeting is really, for 13-14, is $34,920,000.
For Fund 10, $30,789,900.
Just Fund 10.
That's just Fund 10.
Okay.
And typically in the past, the budget would be, motion was made to approve the 2013-14 preliminary budget to move forward to the annual meeting as presented.
Okay.
I could look the exact motion.
No.
I'd look for a motion to approve the 2013-2014 budget, proposed budget as presented in the 2013-2014 budget presentation dated July 15, 2013, as just presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2013-2014 budget as presented to take forward to the annual meeting on August 26th. Does that sound right?
August, yes.
Yes,
Monday,
Monday,
August
August.
26th.
August 26th, 2013. Any other questions or comments concerning that proposed budget? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and so that proposed budget is approved for taking forward to the annual meeting. Thanks for all the work, Greg.
Welcome, thank you.